Good afternoon, members, officers and members of the public. My name is John Cater, Clerk to the subcommittee. The public element of today's meeting is being recorded in line with the City Corporation's policies, and the recording shall be retained for up to 1 year. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Busy agenda, but hopefully we should be able to move through this quite swiftly. Town Clerk, let's go through apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. In advance of today's meeting, I've received formal apologies from Deputy Tim Butcher and Philip Woodhouse. Mr. Butcher is joining us, however, on Teams today.
Thank you very much.
And item 2, Chairman, are the member declarations. Are there any declarations under the Code of Conduct in respect to any items on today's agenda, please?
Not seeing any.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 3, the public minutes of our last meeting held on the 18th of November 2025 for decision, pages 7 through 12.
Thank you very much, members. Any challenges on the minutes? Not seeing any actions arising. Not aware of any. No. Okay, thank you. Approved.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 4, the public outstanding actions log. This is joint report of the Chamberlain and the Town Clerk for information, page 13.
Thank you very much. So I think the first one, Janine, Director, I think there was a quick update on this.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The team are pulling together the documents and apologies it wasn't ready in time to send out the link with this agenda, but we will send it out following the meeting within the next kind of 2 weeks. We absolutely get that.
Super. Thank you. And for the newer members who have only joined, just a reminder as to what this was. This was just key documents that are relevant to this committee to have a single, easy landing page that we can access some of those things. And obviously build that out over time. I'm not expecting that to be fully baked at this stage, but at least we'll have somewhere to save things that are particularly relevant. Sorry, yes, Anne.
Okay, thank you. Will the documents be classified as public and non-public, or is it assumed they're all non-public?
Yes, they will be. So we'll have a folder which will link you to kind of published public documents, and then we'll have a separate one which is just internal documents, and they'll be labelled appropriately.
Okay, and is it fair to assume that even if a document is non-public, it could be subject to an FOI and it may be shared?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the other 2 items are for a later date.
Chairman, at item 5, members will note the City of London Street Homelessness Outreach and Support Service Stage 1 Procurement Strategy Report. There is an update to this. I'm just looking to my colleague, John.
Thank you, Chair. Members, yeah, we would like to withdraw this Stage 1 report at this moment in time, following discussions with our Executive Director this morning and the recent sort of notification of the funding settlement for 27-28. This contract would start very close to 27-28. And because it is joint funded between Homelessness Grant, or Russ Leaper Grant, and the City Fund, we felt we would prefer to go back and look at our mathematics again. We may be able to fully fund the project still. It may need to have a little redesign, so we didn't want to go out to tender at this stage. We have got a contingency plan for the delivery of the service, so that won't be affected. So I just wanted to come face to face and give that update. Thank you.
That's really helpful, John. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to take me through that yesterday. I do think for members that the messaging, certainly we've been trying to get across to chief officers and also through the joint RASC and committee chair meeting yesterday, was we do need to segregate out what our sort of fiduciary duties that we have to provide as a local authority and not, and then agree from a policy perspective which of those are going to achieve funding based on wherever we land on the settlement. But as everybody knows, the future looks pretty bleak at the moment, unfortunately, and we're having to make really tough decisions on the back of the government's own decisions in terms of the funding formula. So I'm pleased that officers will bring this back in due course, because clearly some of this is funded externally and some of those services should certainly continue to go ahead. Thank you, Town Clerk.
Chairman, thank you. Turning now to item 6, the Commercial Change and Portfolio Delivery Risk Register Update Report of City Surveyor for information, page 25.
Thank you. Janine, are you?
Yes, thank you. So members, this is our regular risk report. Just to point out, there's only been minor changes made this month. Mainly they were to the the mitigation descriptions, particularly around the Project Management Academy and the cash flow forecasting. So it was just to update where we are now that we've launched the P3 policy framework, and we now have the more detailed approach to the P3 development hub. So they're the key changes that were made. The chairman has also fed back some comments to us, which we will work into our next update, particularly around some of the conversations we're having with HR colleagues at the moment around how we embed the responsibilities and accountabilities around delivering projects and programme management within key roles, and how we do that through the kind of head of profession function, and make sure that it's reflected in the new role profiles that we're putting out for the profession of projects and programme management going forward.
And if I may add to that, also on the procurement side too, of course, those lessons learned, making sure that we bake those in to performance objectives as well, so that people aren't just sticking something in the system and never looking back at it and actually learning from those lessons, which is equally important. The one question I just wanted to ask you about, Janine, was, given the financial positioning that we are finding ourselves in, there is clearly going to be an onward impact to both procurement and projects. I guess, how do we reflect that risk within the risk register? I assume that's a takeaway, but
no. So I was about to have an answer, and then you articulated it at risk at the end, and that I paused for thought on that. So yes, we will think about how we capture it as a risk. I do think, though, this is also a really important point for the organisation, where we really need to kind of reinforce and re-emphasise why the work we've just done around the P3 policy framework is really important, not only in terms of how we make sure there's clear cost control and through our delivery of our projects across the life cycle, but really importantly, the work that we've introduced now around business cases and making sure that actually before we even initiate a project, we have a really clear understanding of costs and value and what the kind of return on investment is going to be. We haven't consistently done that well as an organisation historically. So actually this will be really important around how we make investment decisions going forward in the context of having more financial constraints and making sure that we are making the right decision for every pound we are committing, and that we're really clear what we're getting back for that. So I think it'll be a really important part of how we address this challenge. But you're right, we need to think about in the risk register how we also think about the implications of that. I think on the procurement point of view, I mean, the conversation we've just had with John Barker around kind of some of the considerations we need to give at this point around what we are committing to when our future is so uncertain, particularly on City Fund. We really do need to think about how we have those conversations and how we look at what the current live projects are and do the same sort of conversation and challenge that colleagues in DCCS have done around that particular contract, but how we do that more generally across our whole portfolio at the moment, and make sure we're only bringing forward those things that are really critical at this point until we have a clearer way forward on the financial position.
And I have to say, I think we have definitely seen a trend of external procurement contractors wishing for longer and longer term contracts, which actually probably suits us because there is a cost to constantly managing those contracts and going back out and managing a bidding process. But actually, if we have less certainty, it means that we're likely to need to shrink the tenure of a number of those contracts. And there's probably an additional cost that's baked into that as well that we should be aware of. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the risk register? Not seeing any. Town Clerk?
Chairman, thank you. Items 7 through 10 are various gateway reports that have been through various different committees over the past month or so. In advance of the meeting, we haven't received any questions on those ones.
I did actually have a conversation on item 10 this morning. Dawn, I know you had a question on your microphone, Dawn.
Sorry. Just get the correct page up. There we are. Page 179. I know I'm new to this committee, so please excuse me if this is a question that is not appropriate, or you've already asked this question and had answers to it. But we seem to be going from a budget of £10 million on the St Paul's gyratory system to £19 million. That seems like a huge difference. It's almost double what we budgeted for, and I just wondered why. And bearing in mind the constraints we've got coming along, are we sure that we should be putting in parks and things like that in an area where no children live? So just as a common sense point, I just wondered if we could get some answers on that one, please.
Jill, I think you might be online to be able to answer.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. In terms of the funding, that is still within the funding envelope that was identified for this project. So the full cost was has always been kind of the best part of £20 million. It's just that we've done a double phased Gateway 5 authority to start work. So we did the highway works first, and this is the cost of the public realm scheme to improve to put the Greyfriars Square in. In terms of its priority and whether or not public spaces should be put in, I'm not entirely sure I can comment on that. That definitely been taken at other committees.
Okay. Then I have another question. What, if I may, Chair, why would we have a budget of 10 million when the funding envelope is 19.7 or 20 million? Why would we budget down at that and the budget would not say 20 million and then we are expending 20 million?
So the estimated cost has always been at that top end. It's just that the approved budget to date was the £10 million, which was covering the highways works and the design and evaluation. And the latest budget is for the square delivery.
Okay.
So I think
I'm understanding.
Yeah, so I think what we're saying is that the sort of business case was always around £20 million. We've just split that into different projects so that they're delivered in sort of stages. The first phase was approved, which was highways work. There is a second phase which is before us, which is for another 9 million or so for the next piece of that pie. I think once we move into the sort of business cases, so a lot of the reporting formatting is changing under the P3 framework, which essentially what we want to get to is a business case that makes very clear what all the relevant details are at the front, and then we just test constantly at each gateway stage, are you delivering against that business case? I think that will hopefully get us much clearer than all these many pages that we have to wade through, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yep, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions on those items? No, if not, we'll note those. Thank you, Town Clerk. Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, Chairman. Items 11 through 17 are again various gateway reports, Gateway 6 report, project closures. Chairman, I think you had a comment to make on those project closure papers.
Yes, I think hang on. Just remind myself what they were. Yes, need to capture high-level reporting to project procurement sub on a regular basis, outlining lessons learned from the closure reports. I think that's really important, and making sure I also understand into the project boards to make sure that we're actually embedding those. I'd also suggested, as we'll see for a number of these closure reports, they were delivered on time and on budget. And I think we need to celebrate that too for officers that have obviously worked really hard on some of those. And some of these go back over COVID periods as well, where there's been real complexity added into the project flow. So I had proposed that I was going to send a note to the chief officers and their programme teams just saying thank you on behalf of the committee for doing well on that. I think we need to celebrate that work and then focus in on the areas that have gone wrong and the lessons learned going forward. On item 11, I don't think we have anything specific on any of those items. Do we beyond that, John? Sorry.
No, Chairman, just to reiterate the point on items 13 and 14, members, I will send you the correct version of petticoat tap items.
I think 13 is fine. I think we're happy to take that as read, but 14 is the one that we haven't got that we do need to go back to. Sorry, Anne.
Yeah, just about petticoat tar, about lessons learned, because it's failed to reach the HRB standard. It's been sent back, or it hasn't got to the approved standard, even though all that work was done. So, does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying it shouldn't be closed?
Well, it's a HRB, so I don't know really what the connection is between the finishing off of works and registration under the new legislation, but I believe it was the only tower that didn't get approval. So.
Any guidance?
So should I suggest that I take that issue away and speak to the relevant people in the Environment Department, and if we can get a response and circulate that to the committee, if we kind of note and accept the information report on proviso that we get that. If the committee aren't content with whatever's in that note, then we can always ask for that to be brought back for the next meeting.
I think that would be very useful. I have to say that it does sort of point towards a broader issue that I know we've touched on before, which is the sort of testing and audit closure of some of these actions. And I know from other conversations with city surveyors this week, we've talked about the fact that they only dip 10% of testing across the portfolio, and perhaps it needs to be higher in some areas rather than others. And the built environment, given the delays and the overspend and the high risk of residential concern, perhaps that's an area that we should be requesting that they flex testing upwards and look at the sort of resource implications of that.
So I was thinking the other day about some other things that you asked me about, and how best we do that through this committee. And I think now that the P3 kind of policy framework is bedding in, and where the decision making for a lot of the gateways is happening elsewhere, I think that there is kind of more time available in the work of this committee, and we can think about a forward plan around what are some of the project themes or kind of project risks that you'd like to have a deep dive on. So we could have a session that's around kind of closure. What does that mean? How does that happen across the different types of projects that we do? Because we are going to have less of the individual projects coming here for business. So we could start thinking about what it means in terms of our portfolio maturity and how we are approaching things in order to drive the right kind of practice and behaviour and helping our continued development. So we could start putting together a bit of a forward plan of what some of those areas may be for the coming municipal year and kind of factor those in.
That'd be very useful. I think I'm seeing nods in the room. Thank you for that. Town Clerk.
Chairman, thank you. Turning then to item 18, questions and matters related to the work of the subcommittee or public.
Not aware of any.
Item 19, Chairman, any urgent business?
Not aware of any.
Thank you. Are members now content to exclude the public at this point?
Agreed. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thank you to members of the public.
And great if you could switch off the live feed, please.